What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Wayne James, and today we are reacting to Paul George's career might be over. Let's see about that. Shout out to your boy Flight Mike. Let's get into it. Like and comment, subscribe. We on the road to 300 subs.
Told Paul George suffered the injury during an on-court workout last week, and the decision was made to undergo arthroscopic surgery.
This is a gut punch to the 76ers. I cannot believe this, and I will just say there's no such thing as minor knee surgery. Even the most basic procedure requires a big recovery. Another setback for this team.
What if I told you that one of the NBA's biggest free agent signings in recent history has turned into such a catastrophic disaster that it might signal the end of a Hall of Fame career? What if I told you that a guy who was once in MVP conversations just had surgery on the same knee that derailed his entire first season and is now heading into what could be another injury-riddled nightmare? And what if I told you this player's own podcast became such a distraction during his team's collapse that fans were literally booing him for caring more about sports media than winning? There's a brand new chapter in this Paul George saga, and it is not looking good. I was originally trying to be optimistic about Paul George's second year with the Philadelphia 76ers, but this latest incident completely ruins everything. So before we get to the content, as I promised you guys in my last video, the setting's not going to look as nice because currently I am in Europe traveling a little bit, but this news was so significant I had to bring it to you guys. So make sure you subscribe, turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device, because I'll stop at nothing to bring you the latest NBA news. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro.
Your intro so lit, I can never tip. I just gotta.
When scammers strike, Optimum Business keeps you one step ahead, blocking cyber threats before they happen. Get secure fiber.
As a result of my brand new partnership with Fantasy Aces, we have been profiting like crazy via my new Discord server. I'm going to leave a link to it in the WAP link in the description down below. And if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And thank you, Prize Picks, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Man, that's hard to do when I'm sitting down in this chair. Let's start at the beginning. July 1st, 2024. Paul George was without a doubt seen as the most coveted free agent in 2024 free agency, and a lot of people forget that. Paul George cashes in and signs a 4-year, $211.6 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers were ecstatic. They move on from Tobias Harris, who did not live up to his contract and has held them hostage for all of Joel Embiid's prime, and they bet everything on a player that was once the face of the Indiana Pacers, is a perennial all-star, and became the blueprint for the modern two-way player in the NBA. They had Joel Embiid, they added Paul George, they had Tyrese Maxey, and they thought that they had their championship core. But here's what makes this story so tragic. The Los Angeles Clippers saw this coming. George himself revealed that the Clippers offered him just 2 years and $60 million.
So the first initial deal was like 2 years, 60. So I'm like, whoa. 2 years, 60? That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Philadelphia gave Paul George everything the Clippers wouldn't, and now they're living with the consequences after that decision. Fast forward to October 14, 2024. It's Paul George's first preseason game versus the Atlanta Hawks. Nothing major, right? Wrong. This one game would change the entire season for Paul George. PG hyperextends his left knee. They diagnosed it as a bone bruise and said it wasn't serious. But here's what should have been a major red flag. This was the same left knee that would plague him all season long. And when you're 34 years old with Paul George's injury history, there's no such thing as a minor knee injury in the preseason. He missed the first 5 games of the regular season, and already the Philadelphia 76ers were getting a preview of what was to come. A max contract player who couldn't stay on the court but loved staying behind the mic. And when Paul George finally did return, the numbers were immediately concerning. Through his first month back, Paul George was averaging just 14.8 points per game on 40.5% shooting. This wasn't the superstar they'd pay for, this was a shell of his former self. But on November September 20th, things would go from bad to catastrophic. The same exact injury, the same exact knee, but this time against the Memphis Grizzlies. Nick Nurse, the 76ers coach, basically confirmed everyone's worst nightmare. It was a hyperextension, similar to the preseason, the same knee. They said it was similar to last time, which was a bone bruise. When you're re-injuring the same body part in the same way just over a month later, that's not bad luck. That's your body breaking down. By the midpoint of the season, the numbers painted a devastating picture. Paul George was averaging just 16.2 points per game, his lowest scoring average since 2011 when he was basically a rookie. To put that into perspective, that's a 42% decrease from his 2018 to 19 season where he was an MVP candidate averaging 28 points per game. His shooting percentages were equally horrific, 43% from the field, down from his 44% average, and just 35.8% from three-point range, which was a significant drop from his 38.3% career mark. But here's the most damning stat of all. When Paul George played alongside Joel Embiid, the guy they supposedly brought him in to complement, he averaged just 14.2 points on 41.2% shooting in their 15 games together. That's not championship level basketball. That's barely bench player production. His player efficiency rating dropped to 14.5, well below his 19.2 career average. And he contributed just 1 win shares for the entire season. For a guy making over $50 million, that's basically theft, and the way Paul George was handling this didn't make Philadelphia 76ers fans happy, because through it all, he wasn't that good at sitting behind a microphone. Let me just say that. Here's where the story takes a turn that absolutely nobody saw coming. While Paul George was struggling on the court, missing games left and right, and letting down an entire fan base, guess what he was doing in his spare time? He was running a weekly podcast. That's right, Podcast P with Paul George was releasing episodes every single.
Paul George has more YouTube podcast clips than field goals. Yo. It's basically he has more podcasts. It's like points. He averaged more clips than his field goals. Shit. Damn, Paul George, you just got shitted on.
Week, even as the 76ers were spiraling towards one of their worst seasons in franchise history. The optics of this were absolutely terrible, and it was a situation where Paul George just should have read the room. I mean, picture this. You're a Sixers fan who spent your hard-earned money on season tickets. Your team is losing. Your max contract star is injured half the time, and when he does play, he's shooting 40% from the field. And then you find out he's spending his time and energy on a podcast instead of getting healthy and focusing on basketball. The fans noticed, and boy did they notice. During the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl parade, fans confronted George directly. One fan yelled, "We could have kept Tobias Harris if you were gonna do this shit." When fans are saying that they'd rather have the guy you replaced, that's rock bottom. And the breaking point came on February 26, 2025. After the 76ers' 8th straight loss, when Paul George came out and made one of the most bizarre announcements I've ever seen.
I want to let the Podcast P family know that after today's episode with Dwight, I plan to take a break from the pod just to focus on getting my body right, getting mentally right, and, help this squad make a push towards our goal to finish the season out, give ourselves a chance to be in contentions to compete for a championship.
And forgive me, maybe I just have too much faith in people, but I don't think anyone could be this dumb. I don't think anyone's looking at their team's season when there's like 20-something games left to go, when you have the 3rd highest odds at winning the NBA draft lottery, and saying, hey, I'm gonna take a break from my podcast so I can help us win a championship. The damage was already done, and it's not like things were looking so great even prior to this podcast episode for Paul George physically. On January 25th, 2025, 1 month before the hiatus, there was another injury, but this time it was a finger injury against the Chicago Bulls. Now George is dealing with both knee problems and hand problems, and he's basically held together with tape and prayers at this point. By March, George was so desperate to contribute that he was taking pain-killing injections just to play. He admitted this publicly, saying, "I'm hanging in there. I'm just trying to give this team everything I have. The report is true. I'm taking some sort of medicines to kind of play through pain." And I will be honest, typically I'd admire a human being for really making this tremendous sacrifice, putting your body on the line for your team so they could be successful. At the same time, I don't know why he did it. It's March at this point. The season was over. There's no point in doing this at all whatsoever. I think he was just is doing it just to create a spectacle, and I'm not trying to discount how difficult that is on the body. Maybe I'm just ignorant. I can't see a reason why he would have done this as opposed to being shut down for the remainder of the season. That's not competitive drive, guys. That's desperation. That's a player whose body's breaking down and who knows that his career is slipping away. And by March 17th, his season was officially over. George received injections in both his left adductor muscle and left knee and was ruled out for at least 6 weeks. His final game was 7 points on 3 for 11 shooting against Minnesota. What a way to end a $50 million season. Now here's where the story goes from disappointing to genuinely concerning for Paul George's future, because I know I've bagged on him a lot in the past, and I think my bagging on him was kind of warranted. At the same time, I have a lot of empathy for any professional athlete that goes through injuries, that is trying to get healthy and come back and try to contribute to winning. But on July 14, 2025, just a few days ago, the middle of what should have been a recovery summer, Paul George had to undergo an arthroscopic left knee surgery. Dr. Jonathan Glashow at NYU Langone performed the surgery, and while they're calling it a cleanup procedure, let's be real about what this means. This is the same knee that he injured twice during the season, and now instead of getting better over the summer, it got worse. The 76ers are saying he'll be reevaluated for training camp, but here's what that actually means. They have no idea when Paul George will be ready to play basketball again. This surgery represents something bigger than just another procedure. It's confirmation that Paul George's body is breaking down faster than it can heal. At 35 years old, having surgery on the same knee that already cost him half a season is not a recipe for success. So now let's talk about what this July surgery means for this upcoming season, because this is where things get really scary for Philadelphia. Paul George has now missed significant time in 5 of his last 6 seasons. That's not a streak you want when you're paying someone $51.7 million for the 2025-26 season. And the pattern is crystal clear. Knee injury in the preseason, return too early, re-injury during the season, miss extended time, surgery in the offseason, repeat. And each time he comes back a little bit slower, a little bit less explosive. $51.7 million for the 2025-26 season. And the pattern is crystal clear. Knee injury in the preseason, return too early, re-injury during the
Hey, yo, pause. I don't know why did I pause on this shit, bro. But hey, yo. But yo, he looked like he's doing you know, I feel like a female pose.
The season, miss extended time, surgery in the offseason, repeat. And each time he comes back a little.
Sorry, guys. My girlfriend's alarm on.
Little bit slower, a little bit less explosive, and a lot more limited. Training camp starts in September. That's less than 2 months from his surgery date. Even if everything goes perfectly, and when has anything gone perfectly for Paul George lately, he'll have to learn how to adjust to new teammates, because for the most part, the Philadelphia 76ers were injured for a large portion of last season, and they also drafted VJ Edgecombe with the number 3 overall pick in the NBA draft this past offseason, and he'll have to learn how to deal with all of this and get acclimated to a system while recovering from knee surgery. But here's the most concerning part. In the 2024-25 season, George's struggles weren't just about missing games. When he actually played, he was bad, really bad. His 16.2 points per game, 43% field goal percentage, and negative impact metrics suggest that this isn't just about health anymore. This is about a fundamental decline in ability. Now, if you think I'm being melodramatic here, because let's be honest, YouTubers could be a little melodramatic from time to time, let's put Paul George's situation in historical context, because the comparisons to other fallen stars are eerily similar and absolutely terrifying. Carmelo Anthony at age 34 fell from a 28.7 points per game peak to a 13.4 points per game and struggled to find an NBA role. Blake Griffin was out of the NBA entirely after a similar injury-riddled decline at age 34. John Wall went from a 23.1 points per game all-star to an 11.4 points per game role player by age 32. According to Berkeley Sports Analytics Group, NBA wing player players typically experience sharp decline after the age of 32 to 34, especially those with extensive injury histories, and Paul George fits this pattern perfectly. Multiple knee surgeries after age 34 typically signal permanent decline. Wing players who depend on athleticism face steeper drop-offs than other positions. The combination of age, injuries, and declining efficiency creates what researchers call an irreversible spiral. And here's the kicker: Paul George's injury history is actually worse than most of these examples. The gruesome 2014 compound leg fracture that I honestly didn't think Paul George would be able to return from. The fact that he became the player he is now and made the money he did and had the near MVP season in 2019 is nothing short of a miracle after what he experienced in 2014. But then there was the 2021 UCL tear, the 2022 elbow surgery, the 2023 season-ending knee sprain, and now repeated left knee injury issues this past season. That's not normal wear and tear. That's a body that's been breaking down for a decade. And here's where it gets really ugly for Philadelphia. They're not just stuck with a declining player, they're stuck with the worst contract in the entire association. Breaking down Paul George's deal, he's getting paid $51.7 million next season, approximately $54.2 million in the 26 to 27 season, and $56.7 million in 2027 to 28 with a player option, and he's definitely opting into that player option. That's $162.6 million over the next 3 years for a player who just had surgery on the same knee that ruined his previous season. The Clippers saw this coming, and I'll admit, I kind of destroyed them for the way they handled this past year. They refused to offer anywhere near this deal, and I still think they should have at least tried to trade him and get something in return from the Warriors, but they look like geniuses in hindsight. They basically said that we're not betting on your body holding up past the age of 35, and they were absolutely right. There's already trade speculation about Paul George, but what could you really trade Paul George for? And the on-court struggles and contract issues are just a part of the story. The leadership situation reveals just how far Paul George has fallen as a franchise cornerstone. George himself admitted that Kyle Lowry, not him, became the team's vocal leader.
For our locker room, Kyle Lowry stepped up and was the voice every single day.
Think about that. A 39-year-old role player had to step up because the max contract star couldn't lead. So here's the bottom line. Paul George's journey from MVP candidate to injury-prone, overpaid veteran isn't just a disappointing career arc. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of betting on aging stars with extensive injury histories. The July 14th surgery wasn't just another procedure. It was confirmation that the same problems that ruined his 2024 to 25 season are going to follow him into 2025 to 26 and beyond. And at 35 years old with this injury pattern, there's no realistic path back to elite level basketball. The numbers don't lie. A 42% decrease in scoring, a 50% availability rate, and advanced metrics that suggest he's barely a replacement level player at this point. The injuries are mounting, the effectiveness is declining, and the contract is unmovable. Philadelphia bet $211.6 million that Paul George could age gracefully and stay healthy, and they lost that bet spectacularly. The Sixers championship window hasn't just closed, it's been slammed shut by the very player they paid to keep it open. And this isn't just the end of Paul George's time as a superstar, but based on everything we've seen, this might be the beginning of the end of his NBA career entirely. So let me know in the comment section down below, how do you guys feel about this, especially if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic.
Alright, man. Alright, everybody. I'm gonna just say it like this, man. Let's see if the 2025 or 2026, if we could see the actual PG-13 from the Pacers, the Prime, or the Thunder PG-13. Because right now, where I see it, it looks like a broken down old man. And I'm not just, no, Paul George, no jokes aside, no. Paul George is like one of my top 10 best favorite players in NBA history. But I just don't see it like he would have, because throughout all his injuries, he can't be like in his prime era, you know what I'm saying? It's so hard to be in that prime era, dude. Like, look, like for example, like Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose torn his ACL way back when he was on the Bulls. And then I think he torn the same exact one or the other on our other meniscus or something like that. And then all of a sudden, he's been dealing with injuries throughout. And we never seen a prime Derrick Rose throughout his entire career since he made it to Timberwolves. And he averaged, like, I think it's 60 or 50 point. And he was so emotional. And he was bounced from team to team to team to team to find himself. It was so hard. So he had to decide to put down the ball and say, I'm retired. So we see things like Melo. We see things like Blake Griffin. We also see things like it's about to be Paul George next.